Four, three, two, one. Welcome back.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's really great to see everyone. It's been 7 months since last posted any video on my YouTube channel, and to be honest, it hasn't been really intentional. I don't know. I think business school just gets you into that phase of not being able to do anything at your own time or be able to plan effectively, especially when it's not something that's giving you grades or giving you money. So I'm sorry, you guys. But today I have there's so much to tell you guys. I know I said I was going to do a video on my trip to Europe. I was going to talk through Schengen visa processing, and that's what I'm actually trying to do today. I have a special guest with me who agreed to spend some 20-30 minutes with us answering questions about the Schengen visa process from Nigeria. I would work through, with other guests from applying from London, and then I would most likely do the one from USA in the next few days, and then we can have it all together. But say a very big thank you in the comment section when you're done watching this video and gleaming the experience you need to get from Toby today. I will give Toby now the opportunity to introduce herself, tell her a bit about, tell us about her trip and the reason why she wanted to work through a Schengen visa, and just give us general gist about herself. Toby, over to you.
Hi everyone. So I'm Toby. I'm based in Nigeria, constantly shuffling between Lagos and Ibadan, but born and bred there. So I applied for the Schengen visa because I was going to the UK to spend some time, and I just figured, hey, why not just try something new, right? So I had like a really rough year, and I felt I needed some space to just do something different for myself. So I figured, hey, you know what? This would be a good opportunity to do something. And then I had a cousin, or I have a cousin in France who said, hey, you know what? If you need some space, you can come over here. So I figured, oh, yeah, sure, let's do that. So I was going to visit France and then Amsterdam just because for some reason
Very
I just
nice.
like the idea of Amsterdam. So I had to apply for the Schengen visa to do that. And yeah, that's how I got
Very
here.
nice. So especially knowing how a lot of people, now that we know your motivations basically were just to visit, that's another thing I want everyone to take note of. We're not giving you advice or sharing our experiences so you can use to jackpot. I don't know. People have a very, right now everyone is trying to leave Nigeria and all of that, but that's not the purpose of this video. This video is to tell you how to go apply for a visa that allows you go enjoy your vacation in any of the Schengen countries and go back to Nigeria or go back to wherever it is you're coming from. Right. So I'm not trying to advise you to use this visa as an opportunity to like not go back to Nigeria. That's not the purpose. But my first question for Toby today is um for you, when you wanted to start this process, I mean, we got your motivations. You needed some time away from like, the hustle and bustle of Nigeria to just get out of there. Um, did you use an agent to help you through this process, or you ran through the whole thing by yourself?
I did myself. When I first started, it was a bit confusing. So I actually considered an agent, and then I reached out to people that I knew that were living full time in the Netherlands. They, hey, do you have an agent? And nobody had. So I had to figure it out. So, they helped me the ways they could, maybe shared some links, and I did the rest myself.
That makes sense. So what did that process look like for you? Like, where was your starting points? What was the thought process for you as an individual? Where did you start from? What were the areas or the links you visited, etc.?
So quite frankly, for half of the application, I was torn between I want to do this versus can I afford to do all of this? Because mind you, I was going to the UK first. So there was that whole thing of do I make my plans before I budget or do I budget first? But anyway, I tried to make my plans first. So I think I just started by Googling like French embassy and then the Dutch embassy. With the Dutch embassy, there was a bit of confusion, and I think that's because the Dutch embassy closed or something, but basically they run their approvals through the French embassy in Nigeria. So eventually I
Ah,
saw that was clear that okay, if you're going to the Netherlands, you should apply through the French embassy. And I was already going to France anyway. So it was just like one standard application that I had to do.
That makes
So yeah,
sense.
I had to Google, French embassy and like what the requirements are, right? And then there's a website called Schengen Visa Info. We could drop the
Mm-hmm.
link in the
Yeah.
description later.
Yeah.
So, in a YouTube. Yeah, so there's this website that just kind of listed out all the things that I
Yeah.
needed to get. And then the first thing was the application form. Right. So you start with like your basic biodata, name, passport number, etc. But they ask you a few things about where you want to go to, how long you want to stay, and what your intentions are and where you'll stay. It was pretty very short compared to like the UK visa form.
Yeah.
So they ask you where you're going to spend longest or where your first point of entry will be, because that is the embassy you should apply through. Because Schengen is multiple countries, one visa.
Yeah.
So because I was going to enter from France and I was spending the longest time there, I applied through the French embassy. And then they asked, for the date, when would you enter? When would you leave? What do you want to do here? Then they also asked, where are you going to stay? So for me, I had an hotel booking, right? So it was like, okay, are you going to stay in a hotel or is there a company hosting you, etc? And then what else did they ask for? And then how you're going to pay for the trip. So
Yeah.
do you have a credit card? Is there someone sponsoring you? All this kind of thing. So it's maybe like 3-4 pages of questions. It's quite short, and then submitted that online. And then when you're done with that, you move on to booking the visa appointment. So they don't interview you, but you have to go and drop your documents at the visa center. It's on Freedom Way in Lekki, Lagos.
Mm.
Right.
Is that the VFS
So
one?
yeah, that's the VFS one.
Ah, okay.
Right. So I had to like go online and then um pay for the appointment. So you pay for the appointment and then you pay for the visa. So there are two separate things you pay for, right? So went online, scheduled the appointment. The dates were about a month away from when I wanted to schedule the appointment. So like if I went in like January 1, the closest date was like February 1, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when online schedule, they ask you if you're a frequent traveler or if you're not a frequent traveler. And it's a different kind of categorization. Right. So frequent traveler means like, you've been to a couple of countries in the last 5 years to see. Anyway, so you choose your dates, pay for any additional services if you want, and then that was it. I just had to wait for the date.
Yeah, so I think that frequent traveler part could be a bit confusing to people. So it's like saying the question really is, have you had any other travel experience aside from like, it's almost like the question of, is this your first time traveling to Europe, right?
Exactly. As opposed to like the frequency of travel.
Of travel.
Yes, it wasn't about, do you travel like every 6 months? It's just, okay, have you been to other places in, I think, the last 3 years or the last 5 years? And then
Mm.
that was just one question on that.
Yeah, very nice. So for you at that point, the appointment date is when you get to go drop your passport, right?
Yeah.
So, and then you also get your biometrics and everything else done.
Yes, at the appointment center, yes.
So at that point where they took your passport, what was the duration like before they came back to you? Because I know it could take like a few months before, especially in Nigeria. But what was that like?
It took 8 days. Eight.
8 days, amazing.
I was
Actually.
I was surprised. I was very surprised because I was already thinking about moving back. Like if it wasn't going to be too expensive, moving back my flight to the UK just in case my passport didn't come back.
Mm,
Um, yeah, but they called me the next week and said,
your
your
passport is ready for
passport.
pickup. But
Yeah,
a very key thing I want us to note here is you already had a UK visa, right?
I did.
Yeah. So that's another thing that, and this is like info for anybody else, right? There are some visas that enhance your passport. We all know the green passport is fairly, let's not, for lack of better words, but there are some visas that enhance your passport and make it easy for other countries to trust you enough to give you their own visas, right? And the fact that Toby already had a UK visa stamp on her passport fairly made that process easier, right? And I think that's also where that question of, are you a frequent traveler thing comes in as well. It's I would say visas in general are very trust based, right? we don't have a necessarily good reputation out there. And Toby, correct me if I'm wrong on this. We don't necessarily have a good reputation out there as Nigerians because we're always trying to leave the country and not come back to it. But Toby has a UK visa. They believe Toby will go and come back, and there's really no reason why she would want to extend her stay in France. And it's easy for her to get a visa. I remember when I did my application as well, I got mine back in less than less than 5 days actually. I submitted and then got called back, got the email that my passport was already being sent back 2 days after. And I was so shocked at how fast the process was. But one thing I know aided that was because, first of all, I was already in the US, right? Nobody assumes that I want to leave the US for France or wherever it is. And then I already had the UK visa as well. And maybe that's another process we could talk through in like the next few minutes. But I think one thing I really want people to be aware of is the importance of having like your documents complete where you're going for this appointment. Now, you, for example, already told us that you already detailed what you were going to do in France. I'm sure you already had. So what if, since you were staying with your friend, did you do a hotel booking, or did you just mention that you were going to stay with your friend and provide evidence to that regard?
So what I did was to get a hotel booking. So I'd spoken to my friend, and the feedback was that you have to register your guest at the local government in France or something like that. But anyway, if I was to apply using those details, he would need to do something. And I was like, yeah, this
And
sounds
that's like a
long.
hectic process, right?
I don't know how local government work there, but I'm not really asking you for that level of
Detail, yeah.
effort. Yeah, like let's not do that. Um, so I figured, let me just get my hotel booking, and then when I figure out like where I'll be staying, we can sort that later. So I went to booking.com. So for the Schengen visa, they need your itinerary, right? So many people assume that you need to pay for everything before going, but that's not the case. Like they want to see what
True.
you plan to do, how you plan
Mm-hmm.
to do, not necessarily that you need to pay for
Mm-hmm.
it. So for my hotel booking, I use booking.com. I got one of the non-refundable, sorry, one of the refundable
Refundable ones.
options, yeah, where I can cancel like ahead, and then they don't need to
Yeah.
bill me. So I did that and just showed, okay, I'll be here from this day to this day, then be here from this day. For the flight option as well, there are some sites that actually give you what's it called? They
A
give you
reservation.
flight itinerary. Yeah. So the one I did was $10 for one way, right? Which I mean, compared to the actual cost of a flight, was not even bad at all. So I did that again just to say, okay, this is how I'm going from this place to this place. And then I wrote something
Yeah.
to ask you for a cover letter, right? So I just wrote a letter saying, hey, I'm going to be here.
OMG, Toby, we lost you for a second. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I feel like the Nigerian network is doing its thing. Can you hear me right now? I'm just gonna pause the recording for a second till I'm sure that I can get Toby back. Um, all right, so we have Toby back. And where you stopped was where you were talking through how you booked the one-way ticket through these guys with $10.
Oh yes, so there's some sites that do that. So one way was $10, and then return flight was about $16. So anyway, I did that and then printed out so they sent you the ticket itinerary. So printed that out along with like the hotel itinerary. I wrote a cover letter explaining, what I was going to do in the countries I was going to, and then yeah, submitted that. Now because I had a cousin right in France, I got a letter saying, okay, this is this person. They're coming to visit me, blah, blah, blah. They'll be staying at XYZ place. Just I attached it to my application. I don't know if it made any difference if they check. I really don't know, but I did that anyway.
Yeah, I think that's basically really similar to the process I also went through when I was working through mine. So you would need to have this itinerary thing down, just describing what your individual days would look like in France or
Why
whatever
wasn't that
country you're
before?
going to. The crazy thing, I had to do that. So I don't like heartbreak. And to be honest, the timing and the dates I got were really close, and from especially to when I was trying to travel. So I needed to be sure that I was going to get an approval, like that, like sending it, there wasn't going to be any note or anything like that. So, and I was going to 8 countries. So I literally had to put every single thing to say from here. But the thing is, you don't have to put an itinerary for all your 8 countries. You just have to do the itinerary for the country you're traveling to and applying through. So I did my application through Spain, you did through France. So more general information here is you can apply for a Schengen visa through any of the Schengen countries. It doesn't have to be specifically France or Spain. It could be Germany, it could be anywhere. The goal of the Schengen visa is that if you apply, for example, through Spain, and you get a nice duration and everything, for every country that identifies as a Schengen country, you're able to use that same visa to go into those countries, right? So for example, if Toby had said she wanted to leave France to head to Germany, she would have been able to do that easily because Germany is also a Schengen country. So I guess we could just like move on to what the collection process was like for you, right? So did your visa get sent directly, or did your passport get sent directly to you through DHL, or what was that process like?
Yes. So when I filled the form online, I asked for them to send it to me, right? Because I mentioned, I shuttle between Lagos and, but I wasn't sure what it was going to be. So I'm like, you know
Yeah.
what, just send this thing to. So if you, I think maybe like on a Thursday, I got the email that, hey, the decision has been made. And then that later that night, I got another message saying, hi, your passport is with UPS. And then the next day, someone from UPS called me, said, hey, you know what, I've been told to deliver this to your address. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
it's
got it.
really it's fairly seamless when I think about like delivery processes. So I think one thing or a few things that I think we should highlight from this call is, again, the purpose of this call is not to tell you how to jackpot. We don't know how to do it because we didn't jackpot. But the most important things to note is all the documents that is required. And the links will be posted to everywhere you need to go to be able to like run you through this process. First things first is head to I think I used Schengen info as well, and it just had all the countries there, and I just put in ticked the country I wanted to apply from, and it took me to that website, right? Again, in this process, Google is your friend. We have a thing for not liking to do research for ourselves in Nigeria, that we think agents are better. Half the time, they are not actually better. Because if it comes to a process where you're required to do an interview, for example, or you even get to the border. I remember when I got to Albania and the person was asking me questions about how long I intend to stay. And I mean, this I feel was like not necessarily, I won't say racism, but I guess just like being skeptical, like, what is this black chick coming to come and do here with her friend? Right. And I mean, we're literally the only black people like on the line. So she took her time asking so many questions, like, so where are you coming from? What is your purpose for visiting Albania? When are you leaving? And I'm like, I just came. You're already sending me out. So, and then the next thing she would say is, you don't have a visa. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, I had to be really calm and be like, okay, do you want to go through all my passport pages to see how many visas I have so you can see which one applies to Albania? So Albania doesn't require, if you don't require a visa for Albania if you have a UK visa, right? So because it's not a Schengen country, but you don't require, so once you have a UK visa, you don't require a visa to go to Albania. And she's like, I've overstayed my welcome. I'm like, I've not even gone through half of the timing I'm supposed to use in these Schengen countries. What do you mean I've overstayed? So things like that happen, to be honest. And it's really I don't know that it's their fault. I think it's just a lot of, violated trust, especially from people like you and I, right? Going through this whole process and then deciding we're not going back to Nigeria. But first things first, get to schengeninfo.com, which I share the link. Decide which country you want to apply from, especially if you're applying from Nigeria. I recommend France because France seems to be the most accessible, right? Would you say, did you think through, like, maybe you wanted to apply through other countries, or France was the one you chose and you decided to go through France?
So, France, because you have to, you're supposed to apply through where you want to go anyway. So
Enter
I just
from.
wanted, yeah. So I only planned to visit two places. It had to be one of the two places that I was visiting. And since the Dutch embassy was working with the French embassy, I didn't really have much of a choice, quite frankly.
Choice. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So on that part, you don't necessarily need to enter through the country you apply from. So I remember during my time, so since I applied through Spain, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was coming from the UK, and for if I did that trajectory, getting into Paris was like the closest from
From
UK. So I went in to Paris first, even though I didn't apply through France. So as far as you have like the Schengen visa and the person is in a Schengen country, the goal is the duration. How long do you spend in these countries? You, for example, that France was your primary country of like, application and all of that. The goal is that you spend more nights in
than
France.
anything,
And that's,
yeah.
yeah, than anywhere else. And that's why you had like they needed the booking to show that effect, because they literally they ask you on your form to how long do you intend to spend here and all of that stuff. Is I don't know why they need you to spend longer in those countries, but for whatever reason they need you to fulfill that so
Yeah.
that next time you want to go there. Because again, I'm going to ask a very quick question. What duration did you get for your visa?
30 days. Yes, so it's 30 days, but then I can be in the country for 30 days, but then it's a span of maybe 50 days, right? But then the longest I can spend is 30 days. Yeah.
Yes. So that's another thing about the Schengen countries. They don't give you, I think it's when you've applied over and over again, like you've been able to build that trust with them. That's when you start to get longer durations. But for the most part, you get like 30, 60 days, and they're like the maximum you can spend in one like visit is this time. So also be very cautious of that when you apply for your visas. The most important things we want to highlight on this call before we talk very quickly about like the UK application process is make sure you're able to have your hotel bookings, your flight bookings. Spain even tells you don't make any concrete reservations. Like, don't pay for anything until you've been able to get the visa back. So there are people who provide these services of booking the info for you, like doing a reservation for you, and you just have to pay them, like Toby said, $10, $20, etc. Now, because I had multiple countries in mind, I paid like 80 something dollars. And that makes sense because you're like, they're running different reservations for you for different countries and all of that. And that made sense to me. There were some countries I even used ferries to pass through. For example, for me from Greece to Albania, I used the ferry. Have the reservation confirmation of that ferry booking. That's what you need to add in your documents. Did you need to show bank statements, by the way?
I So yeah, I showed some financial statements, so not a breakdown of, but just like a summary saying this is what this person has.
Okay. So I remember
But
like one of those process. Sorry, Reagan say something.
no, I just said I included that.
Yeah. So it's always a good idea to always have like a bank statement as well, just to show that you have money to spend and you have the money that would cater for your stay there, etc. and all of that. So bank statements, bookings, flight
Payslip.
reservations, exactly, pay slips too if you're working. That's something you need to show as well. Um, you also need to show your cover letter, like we talked about, and in that cover letter, your itinerary should be there, like what do you intend to do, etc. and etc. Thank you again so much, Toby. If I could ask you just a few questions about like your UK application process, and if you could just run us through that as well, so I could just make this a combo call and all of that. Thank you so much for waiting and all of that. So Toby will talk us now through her UK application process, and if you're looking to apply for a UK visa from Nigeria as well, listen attentively.
All right. So the UK visa process is actually a little more stressful than the Schengen one.
I agree.
So again, I just kind of Googled UK visa, whatever, to get the link, the application link, right? So I think it's government, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you create a profile and then you start answering a bunch of questions. So they ask you outside of your regular information, they want to know about your employer, how much you earn, how long you've been there. They ask you about if you have family in the UK. If yes, where do they live? What do they do? What is your purpose for visiting? In all of that. So for me, I think the first time I said I was going to stay with like I have an aunt there who I visited multiple times, and they usually send the letter of invitation for me anyway. So I said, oh, I'm going to stay with my aunt, just holiday for a few weeks. And then, I provided all the information about. So they ask you if you've been to the UK or the EU or the US. They list out a bunch of questions. So I just said, okay, these are the places I've been to in the past couple of years. And then filled out, all the information basically. And then when you submit online, you go to another site where you book your appointment. So with these ones, they don't interview you, just kind of drop your passport and do your biometrics. The queue there was quite much. The first time I went was very long. So I think it depends on the day and maybe the time of the year, really, but it can be very crazy at times, right? So
I
you
know.
go in.
Yeah, I know apologies. I know there are multiple centers for doing this, right? So which one did you use? Which ones are available?
So there's, at least in Lagos, there's one in VI and then there's one at Ikeja GRA or Ikeja. So I went to the one at Ikeja. Yeah. And so, you just go in, you give them your document. They have the opportunity to scan some stuff for you at the center, or you can upload them. So you don't have to print much to go to the UK embassy actually. So for the Schengen one, there wasn't any option to upload my documents. So I had to go with like a whole ass envelope. But for the UK one, there was the option to upload my things already. So I just kind of scanned and then went in with just maybe my passport and my appointment letter. And yeah, so they go, you go in, they take your fingerprints, your picture, and that is it. It takes maybe 30, 45 minutes, the whole thing inside, and then yeah, you're done. And they called me back maybe, I think the first one took about 3 weeks. The second one took about 2 months, but luckily, yeah, it took about 2 months. Luckily, I paid to keep my passport. So they have a bunch of additional services that you can pay for. And like, I thought I may need my passport for something else. So I just paid to keep my passport while they sorted out the decision. So yeah, because my passport was with me initially, I was like, okay, maybe they're just taking a bit of some time. And then when it got to like the 6th week or 7th, yeah, this is getting bad. So I had to call multiple times and then explain. And eventually, yeah, something got stuck somewhere and they were able to just move it along.
Oh, wow,
And
that's
then
very crazy, especially considering the fact that you already had like a visa before. So why did it?
exactly. I think it was just something that went wrong really. So yeah, it took at least 2 months before I finally go. So they called me like, okay, fine, we made a decision. But I think they never tell you like it's accepted or it's rejected. They just tell you there's a decision, right? So I had to go take my passport to
Okay, so you're cracking
center.
again.
I think to pick
Can
it
you
up
hear me?
again. Oh wow.
Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay.
Yes.
So now it's you stopped at where, so you had to take your passport.
Yeah, I had to take my passport and then like drop it and then go back the next day to pick it up. Apparently, I could have paid for them to bring it back to me or something, but I kind of missed out on those instructions. So yeah, went back again like 15 minutes and I was done.
No, I mean that's fine. I think it's even better like if you just went there to go and pick it up. Well, depending on if you're actually mobile in Lagos, because that could be very annoying if you're not like driving and all of that. But I guess it made sense. I just find it really strange. I think over here too, when I also first did my application for the UK visa, it took longer than I expected it to. It typically should have taken maybe a week. It took like 3 weeks, and I couldn't travel that month anymore. And I had to wait till the summer before I could travel because I missed the timelines, and I had to, move my flight and all of that stuff. So I guess a stressful process with the UK application is really would it be within that waiting time or the queues, or where exactly do you feel like was the part where you struggled with the most when doing the
Form.
applications?
The online form was long. Like they ask you
So many questions.
so many questions,
I
right?
agree.
So it was not something that I could sit down once and then just do it. It's what date did you get the visa that you used to enter blah 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 country in 2017? Like, I don't know. My passport is like, don't ask me this question. Um, so yes, they asked for like a high level of detail, right? So that for me took some time, but when I eventually did, so the first time when I got it in 3 weeks, like I didn't mind waiting because they would tell you the average time for Nigeria is 3 weeks. So that wasn't bad. Getting into the center, again, I've had two different experiences, so I don't know, but usually they'll give you a time, and they actually recommend people come by their time. So a lot of people want to get there first thing in the morning. That's the thing. So your appointment isn't till 10, but you're already there by 7. I don't know, maybe they just feel that maybe there won't be anybody there and they just go in. I don't know. But like always trying to differentiate between, whose appointment is now versus whose appointment is later, has caused a bit of
I think it's
delays.
just a Nigerian thing for us. Even when we go to the US embassy, if your appointment can be for 12 or 2, but by 4 a.m. you're already there. I'm like,
Why?
why? Why are you doing that? And the crazy thing is we only do that in Nigeria because here it's really, really, if your appointment is this time and you come earlier, you stand outside and wait till whenever they call you and whenever it's your turn. So I guess it's just a Nigerian thing for us, always trying to be first and all of that.
For visas, that is.
Yeah, for visas, exactly. It's not like we do that with our weddings or anything. We still come late. It's just when it comes to visas, we're always, number one and all of that. Um, but yeah, is there anything you would, about these two processes that you feel like you could have done better, or you probably didn't have enough information on? I mean, you got great outcomes. That's the most important thing. But what would be like your advice when working through this process for people who are trying to do this?
Um, Try to get as much information as you can, ask questions, watch this YouTube video, etc. I also think that it's not as complicated as many
We
times we
make
feel.
it.
I think maybe because Nigeria, we're already very anxious about our passport, so we're always expecting bad news. But again, provide like all the information that you can. So with visas, the way I think that these people think about it is, does this person have a valid reason for coming here? Do they have a reason to leave? And can they sustain themselves and will not be a nuisance? So as much information as you can provide, whatever is happening for you in Nigeria, if you have a job, if you have a business, show that you can pay for it, show that you have some plans, you kind of know why you're coming there. I think those things help, right? And just as much of like the requirements are usually online, so as much of it as you can read and provide. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, or you may not understand why. Like, why didn't you see my flight itinerary? I don't know,
Yeah.
but I gave it to you anyway, just so that it's not an issue. So I would
Yeah.
say that there's something I mentioned for the Schengen one is they ask for travel insurance.
Very important.
And yeah, yes, and it was my first time actually getting travel insurance because the UK doesn't ask for it. So the first time I tried, the ones I saw were like maybe 150K, and I was like, how much is the old visa first? Yeah, because they do recommend some providers, and then they will say they cover this, cover that. So sometimes if you're not patient and you don't read through, you're not sure what it covers. Again, in insurance, there's always like a lot of fine line, right?
Yeah.
Fine print. So I then checked for what the French embassy required. So it's okay, cover up to a certain amount,
I think it's
baggage,
30,000,
loss.
right? It's $30,000 and
Yes,
then zero deductible.
yeah, so there's that, something that covers like, your flight cancellation or baggage loss. And I don't remember if required COVID or not, but it's just about 4 or 5 things, right? So when you know that, you don't necessarily need to pay for plans that offer a lot more if you don't need them. I mean, if you want to, it's fine, right? But if you're thinking about cost, I eventually paid 12,000 for mine anyway. And thought I would be paying like 100,000. So just something to look
Yeah,
out for.
I think it's also very important because I did the same thing as well. And I think one thing that really like mine was like 27 bucks, $27. And it was like a $30,000 coverage plus zero deductible. So again, this half of this job half of this process is about reading and actually reading and looking for information. The information you need, I promise you, it is all over the internet. There is one thing I realized is when we used to say, when I was still back in Nigeria and we used to talk about Schengen visa, I used to think it was this huge deal, right? And then I walked through the process myself and then realized that it wasn't as complicated as, people make it seem. So one thing I recommend again is as much as possible, get information, really good information. The internet does a very good job of providing information for you. You just have to be patient enough to actually read it, read the fine print, know what you're paying for, and actually go through the process that is required. Agents would only chop your money and do something that you can do. I understand people that are working and all of that stuff, but I promise you, this process is one you can finish in a weekend without having to think through too much about it. Thank you. Oh, Toby dropped off. Oh, must have been a network thing. Just 1 second. Let me see if I could get her back on the call so we can thank her properly. Thank you all for joining this edition. I would make sure that the links as discussed are posted. Toby was an amazing guest for us today, and it's so sad that she dropped off the call. But I guess it's the Nigerian network, but let's not talk too much about it. But thank you all again for watching. Remember to subscribe, remember to share this video. I would also put Toby's if she agrees to share maybe an Instagram or something, I could put that up. Follow her, send thank you notes to her. Oh, Toby's back. Toby, I was just talking about whether you'd want us to put you up on maybe Instagram or something like that. I was just talking through whether you'd want us to share your Instagram and have people follow you and thank you for your time with us today. We're grateful that you joined us. Thank you so much again.
Having me.
We appreciate the insights and the sound advice you've given. Please enjoy your trip to Paris. Buy something for us. Remember to take pictures by the Eiffel Tower. Do the barre and all the things that the French people require. Make sure you try the croissants. They are amazing. The croissants are really, really good. But every other thing, I don't know, unless you have adventurous taste buds, the food is not for me. As a typical Nigerian girl, I'm sorry. I really failed in being explorative with my eating when I traveled. What I was just eating was pancakes, and then maybe chicken and beef. It just did not work for me. The food it was just so adventurous. I think in Italy was a bit better because I could eat pasta and all of that stuff. But please have a good time on your trip. Thank you again so much for your time and spending this minutes with us. Thanks again.
You're welcome. All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you for joining us today. What am I doing? Thank you. Video will be up soon. Make sure you engage, subscribe, like, comment, tell us what you need us to discuss. UK and US will be up in the next few days. See you soon.